Ian McKelvey.
Speaker, just gives me a great deal of pleasure to speak on the second reading of this bill to follow Minister Lotuinga from Mangakea. Only a couple of weeks ago we had Minister Finlayson introducing an agricultural bill fair out of the middle of Rongotai. Of course he does have the Chatham Islands, a few farmers there. Mangakea has only, yes he does, he only has Cornwall Park in his electorate, and of course Cornwall Park used to have a few cattle on it, nowadays more famous for, much more famous for Martin Crowe than for, or the late Martin Crowe than for the cattle it has.
Point of order, the Honourable David Parker.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. Mr Finlayson, like me, does not have an electorate.
Yes. Well, the member might be right, and one mightn't think it's debatable, but actually if the member wants to assert it, someone else can tell him he's wrong during the debate. A point of order, Chris Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, in fact there are clear rulings from the Speaker that the descriptions a list member uses to describe themselves and that we can use to describe a list member must be approved by the Speaker, and that includes any representations around geography.
The member will resume his seat. I, possibly unlike the member, was listening carefully to what was said, and Mr Finlayson, the Honourable Mr Finlayson, was not described as the Member of Parliament for Rongotai. Mr McKelvey. He said he came from.
An interesting sojourn. Mr Speaker, I was going to comment on the late Minister of Agriculture for the Labour Party that was mentioned earlier, but I won't now. Oh, he's still alive. Oh, my word. I won't comment on him. Mr Speaker, this bill, and it's been very well described by Rena Turakatni, the process that this bill takes, been very well described by him. And it really enables New Zealand's horticulture industry, which is made up of numerous small operators right across the spectrum from whatever they grow, really, to remain internationally competitive. It remains those industries to operate under a framework that enables growers and exporters to deliver the produce most valued by diverse consumer groups in different markets while minimising our compliance costs. And that's primarily what it sets out to do. The bill, I think, is a very good piece of legislation, and it enables, as I said, our small operators to combine or to collectively get much more strength than they otherwise would have got. Mr Speaker, I want to thank the Minister and the Select Committee for as was just mentioned, there were 10 submissions to the bill, and the Select Committee got through those pretty quickly, and they were pretty much all in agreement as well. So whilst those submissions were basically in agreement, as usual the Select Committee deviated off from time to time onto glyphosate and country of origin labelling, which is two of our favourite topics, which we don't seem to get away from. but nonetheless, we did get back to the bill. And of course, one of the actions this government, this bill is one of the actions this government is taking to enable our export industries to grow significantly, and it's a good example, really, of a government intervention that doesn't create more production, but creates a much better environment for that production to be marketed in. I think that's a fairly important part of any government's role, actually. And the horticulture industry has a pretty significant target. It wants to grow itself to a turnover of 20 billion by 2020. That's a pretty significant industry by anyone's standards, particularly in New Zealand. This bill is also, to a large extent, about trade. And trades are really, it's the key to what we do in this country. It's also, I guess, emphasises the importance of our free trade agreements. And the average exporter, or horticultural exporter, in New Zealand pays some $38,000 in foreign tariffs a year. So in other words, tariffs to stay in the marketplace. That's a pretty significant bite out of anyone's income. So it does point to the value of New Zealand's free trade agreement process that we've been engaged in for many years now, and will need to be engaged in the future. And one of the good examples of that is the benefit that kiwi fruit and buttercup squash have got in the Korean market out of the very recently signed free trade agreement with Korea. That market's about 55 million, worth about 55 million to New Zealand, and that will be a significant saving once those duties come off. So Mr. Speaker, this bill, I think, has got great value to New Zealand. I'm not going to go into the detail of it any further. That's been covered by both the Minister and by the first speaker from the opposition. So I've got a great deal of confidence in commending this to the House and look forward to the discussion in the committee stages.